At Iyer, and this is Writing to Get Business podcast. And the focus of our show is to speak with people who have written books that have helped them in their businesses. And of course, along the way, helped lots of people who read the books. I have with me today Al Kushner, who is a financial educational specialist, a speaker, an author, and a retirement specialist. And he established Superior Mutual Incorporated. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
What we want to talk to you today about, Al, is the book that you wrote and how that fits within your business. So first of all, let's focus on the topic of the book.
Well, the topic, the name of the book is called The Savvy Guide to Burial Insurance. And I wrote this book last year during a time where everything was changing in the world. The pandemic was just becoming more prevalent, and I was finding it a bit challenging, like most people, to do things that we're normally used to do, which means meeting with people, family, friends, clients, and everything stopped, I think, as of last March to actually do anything. So I took the time to reflect on, what I was doing and how this particular event may be helpful for a book. And I decided to write my book during the pandemic. And it was very timely. In fact, when I released the book, which was in January, the death toll in the US was over 500,000 due to COVID. So I realized the timing was really perfect for the release. Unfortunately, of course, not to celebrate anything, but to help educate and inform people who really were unexpectedly met with bills for funeral expenses that they couldn't pay because they weren't prepared. So I think it's about preparing oneself for the inevitable, and sometimes it may come sooner than you think. So that's why I felt this book was something that people needed to understand and help become informed to make decisions that won't put them in debt to a loved one when the time comes. So yeah, this was something that was important.
I know that some of our listeners may have gone through the experience of going to a funeral home and sat down with the funeral director and looked at the costs associated with a burial or a cremation. It never comes at a time that it feels like it's a comfortable conversation. I've been through it with my father, with my mother, with my brother. For those who have not gone through the experience, can you give our listener or our viewer what to expect when they walk into a funeral home and sit down with the director, and that director's got this long sheet? I remember it was like 8.5 by 14 inches long, showing all of the options. What's that process like?
Well, I would say, what's the term they use? Sticker shock. People don't realize exactly some of the cost involved. It's not just a coffin and a plot. I mean, there are flower arrangements. There are a whole host of things, and it depends on how many people are expected at the funeral. If it is going to be a funeral or it's going to be a cremation, it really, we don't really know because it's just depending on circumstances. But I would say that you're looking at cost depending on where you are, anywhere from 15,000 to 30,000 average, maybe more depending on how big your funeral is going to be, how many attendees, your catered event. I mean, there are a number of factors involved. So these things that need to be addressed prior to that happening, and also where it's going to be taking place. So that's why it's important to really kind of say, where do I want to be buried? What funeral home? So you need to do research before that happens. That's something that people don't do, and they don't want to do, I guess, for whatever reasons. But you gotta plan this. This is not something that, um, especially when you have loved ones who may not be in the financial position to pay for these things, and they're going to be, you know, taking out loans on their house or mortgages or credit cards, or worst case, they start a GoFundMe page and they think that's through that. The government is not going to pay for this. They think that the government's taking and they're going to go ahead and cover the cost. That's not the case. And you really need to know that. And then once you do, then you can make the preparations before things happen. So you don't have to be, in a situation where your loved ones are stuck with a bill that they can't afford to pay.
When you talk about using credit cards, my immediate instinct is to recoil from the idea because I know how much interest credit card companies charge if you miss a payment. It seems to me, Al, that could mount up to be an enormous amount of debt pretty quickly. Is that what
Oh
is
yeah.
happening? Was what you've seen?
Well, yeah. I mean, instinctively, that's where people may go, and assuming they haven't maxed out their credit cards to begin with. So if they have done that, now there are, of course, payment plans with funeral homes that may work with you, but of course, they need to know they have whatever assets that they can attach those to if you don't make the payment. So those are things need to be addressed before you even, move forward with that. If you're going to go that route, or look for other maybe more affordable options like cremation. So that's something that are things to consider when planning for any type of expense of this caliber. So you really need to evaluate that beforehand.
I remember when my stepfather was cremated, there was still a coffin that had to be purchased for the viewing, and then he was cremated. So it seems like there was savings in terms of a burial plot, but that was the only thing that I could identify that didn't have to be purchased as part of that procedure. Am I missing something in terms of how cremations would be less expensive?
Well, I guess it all depends on where the individual is located. Um, like some major cities may be more expensive than other areas. So I think there are websites you can go to, or associations that you may refer to in terms of what the cost would be. But it could range anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 is best that I know of. So again, that's something you need to decide if you want to go that route. Some people don't want cremations. I know in Jewish religion, that's against the religion. So that's something that needs to be decided, beforehand, how best to take care of one's remains.
Mm-hmm. Can you give our listener or our viewer your sense of how the COVID pandemic has affected the funeral home industry?
Well, I would imagine the funeral homes are probably seeing um, such an overwhelming demand for their business that they probably, I guess you might say, um, well, overwhelmed, but I would say business is booming. I mean, that's to say the least. They're not suffering. Um, and I think that they are providing a service for loved ones who are able to cover those expenses. And there are options you can choose in terms of what homes are available. There are websites that you can look at and understand what the prices are before going in there. But they are sources that help loved ones in the grieving process to take care of things that need to be done so that the remains are, in effect, covered for those expenses. But I would say that as a result of COVID and the pandemic, I don't see that stopping anytime soon. I think funeral homes are going to be part of our way of doing things, and as it always been, but obviously even more so. So I think one needs to really take a look at what is expected cost-wise and look at alternative financing that will help to offset the cost, which is why I wrote the book on how to get affordable burial insurance before that happens. So that's why I'm here to talk about that.
Give us a sense of the process that you followed in writing your book.
The process, well, it was research. I looked at options that funeral homes have offered and did a chapter comparing that plans, prepayment plans versus insurance coverage. I looked at the basic health conditions that individuals have, because not everyone qualifies for coverage, and sometimes there can be issues where someone can be either rated or declined. So my book addresses those issues based on the health condition of the individual, also how soon they can get coverage. And a lot of times we can cover someone within 30 minutes or less. There is no exam needed. Some people believe that they need to get examined and someone will come to the home, and that's not the case here. It all can be done online, and it's very easy to do. It all depends on how good your health is, and your age obviously will be determining factors of what the premiums will be for a policy itself. So those are some of the things that I talk about in the book, as well as what to look for in the companies that are available. Whether you want to work with directly with an insurance company individually, like with an agent representative, or work with an independent broker like myself, who shops around and gets the best coverage for the lowest cost based on your health condition. So these are things that I address in the book and help people make informed decisions. That's really what I wrote it to be about.
You know, I didn't realize that there were insurance policies available. I'm curious about the premiums. If, let's say, a funeral would cost $15,000, are there situations where a person buys a policy and then lives a long life and the premiums end up costing more than it would have cost to pay outright for the funeral expenses?
No, actually, what's great about these policies is that the rate is locked in based on your current age, so that won't change. So, for example, if someone who's 60 years old and takes out a policy will be less expensive than someone who takes it out at age 70. So, obviously, the younger you are, the more affordable coverage is available, and also based on your health condition too. But it'll always be less expensive. And what's great about it is that it pays usually from day one. So if something happens 6 months from now and you have a policy, that will pay out to the beneficiary upon your demise, the full face amount. So again, it all depends on the company that you apply with and what they provide as far as benefits are concerned. There are situations where they'll cover for things like living benefits. So, for example, someone is terminally ill and may need to access those funds before they will have an option available to get access to those funds to pay for whatever expenses that are needed prior to their passing away.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there are options that are very unique to insurance. And what's great about these policies is that it'll pay to the beneficiary you designate. Sometimes people designate charities, for example, and they benefited greatly as a result of their generosity. So usually they do partially for the funeral, and whatever's left over towards their favorite charity, they can do it that way as well.
You mentioned that you started writing this book in 2020. It was released in January of 2021. When you wrote the book, how did you envision this fitting within your business?
Well, I felt that this book would be a great resource to a lot of my clients and potential clients. So this was something that was an educational book where they can decide for themselves as far as if this is the direction they want to take. It's a subject that's very challenging. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, and I've had my fair share of individuals who even refuse to even review it because they're superstitious or whatever, or they don't want to hear about it. But I think that thanks to the media, it has brought a lot of attention to the fact that what is happening with the industry and how people are coping with it. And I've seen a lot of families devastated as a result of the cost involved. And I felt that I was doing something that was important for society, because if someone takes out an insurance policy and it saves them thousands, then that's a good thing in a way, because then the legacy they leave behind is not a bill. It's memories and something that they've taken care of their loved ones in that respect, so they don't have to be feeling that they didn't do the best that they could. And people need to understand that this is something that is guaranteed you're going to die. And the question is when and what you're going to leave behind. Those who may not have family members and they don't care, or others who love their grandchildren and want to see that they have, taken care of their needs. Everyone is different individually, but the fact is that you're not immortal, and the pandemic, if anything, is indicator that this can happen to anyone in any age. And that's really where you need to really address the fact that you have to plan in advance. Just like when you meet with an attorney and you have a will drawn up, or you have a power of attorney or a living will, you need to understand that at these times, these challenging times, you need to really say what is in the best interest of your family. Do you want to just go ahead and wing it till the end? That's not the case. There are many cases. You go on GoFundMe pages, you can see thousands of individuals who are trying to raise funds for funerals. And most of them don't get any type of funding at all. In fact, I would say at least 98% of them. So that's not an option. You really need to say, enough is enough. I need to address this issue now. What do I do? What's the next step? The next step is to educate yourself, read the book, learn from what's available. And then if you want to move forward, reach out, look for an independent agent, or reach out to myself, my staff. We're here to help.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Baker, and I just finished writing my first book. In fact, yesterday I uploaded it to Amazon, so it's brand new. My editor was Pat Iyer. I chose her from many choices. I had a book writing course, and she was one of the guests that we had by Zoom, and she was my favorite of all of them. So I wanted her to be my editor. She has hundreds of books that she's edited. She has over 50 books she's written. And that gave me confidence in my very first book, that if Pat thought the book was okay, then I'm okay to share it with the world. And otherwise, I didn't have confidence. Working with her was great. She had really good feedback. Sometimes her feedback I didn't understand. For example, I had this one word I used that I used a lot, and I thought it was really cool. And then she said, "You don't want to use that word at all." And so I had to ask her, well, why shouldn't I use that word? And rather than just going my own way, I thought I'm paying Pat to teach me about writing. And so once I asked her about that, then I understood more about the history of that word and how I should use it. So my book was better as a result. And Pat helped me all the way through the process, including yesterday getting the book properly uploaded to Amazon. And so just having an expert, someone experienced, was really, really helpful. And I'm happy I chose Pat Iyer as my editor.